How to prepare for architecture school, CAD skills, laptops, answers to these questions coming up. Architecture is a design-based degree. That means you're going to be spending the majority of your time working on some sort of design project. Everything else is supplementary and therefore less important. So do you need to have professional level CAD skills, 3D skills before you even start? No, absolutely not. In fact, generally speaking, you tend not to really need to do any preparation for studying architecture at university at all. So my first piece of advice for you is to relax. After all, you'll have plenty of stress once you start architecture, believe me, so you certainly don't need any more of it before you even start. Do double check with your university that they don't ask any specific preparation from you though. Mine didn't, but all universities are different. So with that caveat out of the way, there are some things that you can do that will make your life easier once you get there. This is my opinion. Here are 5 things that I think will be really useful for you to do before you arrive at architecture school. Number 1, Photoshop. Photoshop is a crucial program in architecture. It's a bread and butter program that's so versatile, you'll use it for all manner of little things that you might not even realize. Having a good working understanding of Photoshop, in my opinion, makes a huge difference to how professional your portfolio submissions will end up looking. If you haven't touched Photoshop before, I think it would be really worth your time downloading the trial and just going through a few basic tutorials on YouTube even, and getting to grips with the basic skills of the software, removing a background, layers, and adjusting levels. Understanding the basics now makes it much faster to pick up extra tips and tricks along the line, and it's something that you really don't have time to waste doing when you're in that mad rush to submit your portfolio at the end of term. Number 2, learn the architectural styles. That is, all of the isms, all of the different styles of architecture throughout history. Why? Because if your course is anything like mine, you won't be sat down and taught, this is postmodernism, this is high-tech architecture, etc, etc. You're a student of architecture, you're interested in architecture, you're sort of just expected to know it. And actually, I think it's really useful, not least for knowing what you're on about when you're in conversation with your tutors and peers. Of course, having a sound understanding of architectural styles helps inform your current designs, it helps connect the dots in areas of more specific architectural history you might be taught. If you have history essays like I do, it'll save you loads of time in that initial step of research whilst you're still getting to grips with things. And aside from the fact that you really should know them, I think it's really cool to be able to walk around and look at a building and understand why it looks the way it does, as well as what the way it looks can tell you about when it was probably built. Now, I've barely used 3D CAD in my first year at all, and I certainly didn't include any of it in my studio work in my portfolio submission at all. I have used AutoCAD, 2D CAD, quite a bit, but I think that's a lot closer to drawing in terms of the transition, and I think you can very easily pick that up along the way. If you are really worried about using 3D CAD and you've never done anything with it before and you just want to get your head around things, I would potentially recommend using something like SketchUp or Blender and following along with some simple YouTube tutorials to create straightforward objects. Why is this useful? Well, you may or may not use either of those programs throughout your degree, but what it will do is introduce you to that 3D workspace way of thinking, and that is very transferable. This is a little pocketbook that's amazingly useful for all things architecture. I don't have it with me, it's locked in my room in Cambridge where I'm not living because of coronavirus. I'm really sorry, but I'm going to tell you about it anyway because it's so good. 101 Things I Learned in Architecture School is a really small, coffee table style book you can flick through that's full of loads of little tips, thoughts and anecdotes that have been so helpful to me throughout my studio work. It's something that you can really just leave lying around, pick it up, flick through, look at just one page at a time when you're bored or tired, and it will always tell you something valuable. It's full of those little things like how to draw lines confidently that really make a difference to how effective your visual communication is, but that you might not otherwise think of as a first-year student. I highly recommend this book. It's so small, it's so cheap and cheerful. I'm not sponsored by the author or anything, I just think it's a really great book and is so useful. It's worth buying before you get to architecture school and taking with you. Lastly, my final piece of advice is stay up to date with the architecture world. Follow Design, the Architect's Journal, the RIBA, more importantly, practices that have done projects that you find really interesting and captivating. There are so many different approaches to architectural design, new ideas, and interesting projects going on in the world. Staying up to date and exploring which kinds of architecture you do and don't like informs your own design work, and it's something that you'll be doing throughout your entire career. So, start now. Well, that concludes my advice. I hope you found something useful in this video. I wish you the best of luck beginning your studies, wherever that may be in the world. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.